Hey everyone, and welcome to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. This is a science fiction movie podcast. I am Peter. I'm joined as always by my partner in crime, my droog, you might say, Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
all right. Such a way with words in this movie. So obviously, given my references, we're about to do A Clockwork Orange, Stanley Kubrick's classic from 1971. This is kind of a special occasion because this is the beginnings of our sci-fi 70s month. I mean, obviously it's sci-fi. It's a sci-fi movie podcast. It's always sci-fi. But this is a 70s theme month where we, in advance, did a lot of extra episodes. There'll be 2 a week for the duration of the month, and a lot of them are kind of weird little like sci-fi 70s movies that you may not have heard of. Some of them are kind of B movies, but we're going to kind of start with this big one, and then we've got at least 1 or 2 big ones for the end of the month, so but with some weird quirky things in between. So that is the excitement, the plan. We don't say at the end of each episode what's coming next because we had no idea what order they were going up in, so just it's a surprise. Every time you get a new one, it'll be a surprise. But we will say that Alien will be there for Alien Day. That is the one thing I'll tell you right now. So
Yep, big month.
Special occasions. So, and part of the reason why it's this month, why it's April, because April's our anniversary month. We started the show 1 year ago this month, so which makes sense because we just hit episode 50. Is this episode 52? This is episode 52.
What?
I think it is. Yeah, because Jurassic World that just went up was 51. Yeah.
How about that?
Whoa.
We did it.
Yeah, full year. All right, so we'll start spoiler free for A Clockwork Orange, and we'll give you warning before we get to spoilers. I will warn you there will be discussion on mature themes and topics in this film, so brace yourself. But this movie is about a Rascal feels a bit too jovial, but Alex, played by Malcolm McDowell, in this kind of not too distant dystopian future of the time. Although there's so many things in this movie that, as I was watching it this time, like whenever he says like the word stereo, and I'm like, man, that's so dated to hear someone call it a stereo. Like, I mean, obviously it's of its time, but the fact that it's meant to be in the future, I'm like, that's just such a dated word.
It's ambiguous on when it's supposed to be.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's definitely like an old feature, though. Yeah,
because I mean, sometimes we'll praise like movies and stuff for predicting things, and one of the like I don't want to be too harsh on it for it, but I was kind of thinking like no one predicted like cell phones of some kind in this.
I know. Star Trek already was out. They had communicators.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just weird in hindsight looking back at this sort of stuff. But anyway, so he has got a little gang of 4, including himself, and they kill, they rape, they do all these awful things, and eventually he is captured and put into an experimental rehabilitation system, which raises a lot of themes of free will and, well, rehabilitation and all these things. And one of the, this is probably the first time I've watched this since I watched all of Black Mirror, so I was really like you know what, the episode White Bear is like heavily inspired by this. Like that episode of Black Mirror does not exist without this movie. So, or without the book at least.
I didn't even think about
it. Yeah. But
I didn't even think about it. But you're right. Yeah. That's the one with the woman who's being like tortured.
Yes.
Okay. Where everyone like seems to be mocking her, and she's like in a lot of peril.
It's obviously the difference is that in that episode, I won't say what it is, but there's like a twist to who she really is by the end of the episode. Right. Whereas in this movie, we know who Alex is the entire time, and we're kind of along for the ride. So yeah, so that is the gist of it. So Tara, having watched this again, because obviously we'd both seen this before, at least a couple of times. So how did you feel watching this again?
Still really like it. It's a great movie. It's I don't know if I want to say it's a masterpiece yet, but if it's not, then it's pretty close. Like, it's a really well made movie. It's Kubrick, so it looks great. The writing's great. The themes are clear, and the world is really cool. It is like a not too distant future from 1971. Which obviously doesn't line up anymore, but it's still like, I love that old future style. It's so violent and perverse, and our main character, like, he's the worst of it, like he's excelling in this world of violence because he is so violent, and you can't help but kind of sympathize with him, even though he gives you no reason to, because he's so charismatic and he's just it's such a great performance from Malcolm McDowell, and maybe one of the best of all time. Like, he's really made for this role. It's great. It's a great movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely elements of like are they this way just because the society that they're in, the state that they're in.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nature versus nurture themes in this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot going on we're going to get into. I like the movie a lot as well. It's one of those things where I think I saw it the first time I was too young to kind of really appreciate or get what was going on. I was probably far too young to be watching it the first time I saw it as well, given the content.
Yeah, well, when you're young and you're like, oh, I like movies, I'll watch all the movies that everyone says I'm supposed to see, and you watch this one, you're like, it is very, like, it's still Kubrick, it's weird Kubrick too, so you have to be in the right place for it.
Yeah, I mean, Kubrick has this thing though where he's very entrancing. As soon as I start one of his movies, it kind of just like draws me in because he's so bold with his visuals. And this movie's no different. That main theme plays, and it just goes to a shot of Alex and these guys in the milk bar, and it just kind of, the camera pulls back very slowly as he narrates.
It should be very ridiculous what you're looking at, but it's so captivating because the imagery is just so strong. It's powerful. It's like you're studying it like a work of art. Like, what am I looking at here? What is this trying to tell me? Because I think Kubrick was a photographer.
It's very symmetrical. There's a lot of his composition in this is very symmetrical, and a lot of it's very kind of in your face, very stark at times, but it's not afraid to get kind of wacky at key moments when it needs to be. But there's a lot of themes in here. There's the themes of power, themes of masculinity, and like there's a lot of penis. There's a lot of vagina. I mean, there's a lot of sexual stuff.
It's not just the because we're dealing with someone who's in a gang and who like rapes, and it's all like, even the like really elite people houses that you go to, like all of their artwork is just all perverse. And I think that's like I think that's a choice to like just tell you a little bit more about this world. Like the world has just gone in a direction where we just only look at perverse things now. Like, that's what we consider art.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at it in context, I think in terms of the movie's themes, though, it's more about the idea of power and the idea of penis representing power, to put it in a really blunt way. There's examples to that throughout the movie about how like he tries to assert himself as the most powerful. There's two separate scenes in this movie where someone grabs someone else's dick, and neither time is it like a sexual moment. It's a way of saying, hey, I can be in charge here because I just grabbed your junk. I'm above you because I did this. So there's a lot of that going on. And I laughed because at one point you accidentally said yes at the end of a sentence, and you actually meant to say yet. You just misspoke. But there's a lot of that in this movie where they'll say something, go yes at the end of it. Like this, the dialogue is very unique. It's like a mix of like, English slang. There's a little bit of Russian in there, and then there's a lot of waxing lyrically, but it flows very well. He's a very well spoken little shithead, and which feels very true to life as well. I feel like you get a lot of, I mean, maybe not a lot, but everyone knows that wise ass, right? Everyone went to school with a wise ass like that, who would always talk back and would always be quick to like say something really witty in return. It would just get them into more trouble. And it really feels like he embodies that, again, turned up to 11. But there's a lot of that going on in this as well. So yeah, the visuals are so stark, and kind of every scene is memorable the way it's shot. Every scene has these very distinct compositions and harsh colors where appropriate, and then different colors for different parts of the movie, of course. Like Kubrick has a way of being so like unsubtle, but at the same time it feels like you're still having to really dive in to really think about what the movie's doing, despite the fact that it's really in your face with a lot of what it's doing. There's a giant phallic statues in the background that are then used as a weapon. Even though I know it's something really weird, but that's actually like halfway through the scene where I'm like, wait, it's the wrong way around.
It's art.
To explain it simply, the testicles are on the wrong side, like they're the top. Anyway, the point is that it's full of these really over the top absurd moments, and yet it feels like there's also a lot of subtext going on, and like it's like bizarrely, like the closest things that I'd maybe like sort of start comparing it to in terms of its tone would be something like RoboCop, where
I think there's hints of Verhoeven. Definitely.
Well, it's not a way around. It's more Verhoeven was hints of Kubrick in his work because he was first. But yeah.
Well, of course, but yeah. I mean, I think there's just that, that satire that Verhoeven was so good at in RoboCop, and I'll say for Starship Troopers too. And I think like everything's just so beautiful and colorful and positive, and like there's so much energy in it that you're misled into thinking that you're not watching something hyper violent.
Yeah, a bit of the old ultra violence, as he puts it.
Yeah.
At the start.
Yeah.
So matter of fact as well. Like that's a normal thing you go do. Just a bit of the old ultra violence. Yeah. So it's what teens go out and do in their spare time. So yeah, the movie, like it's so hard to kind of like sit down and critique Kubrick. Like I can sit down and analyze, and we can talk about why things work and themes and all that, but it's really hard to sit down and just say if it's good or not, because like of course it's good. It's Stanley Kubrick. like
yeah, like every movie that you watch of his feels like just such a gift. I don't know, like it's stupid to say, but like even when I was a kid and you watch horror movies and you're into like will the person die or whatever, but then you watch The Shining and you're like, this movie is not really scary, but you can't take your eyes off it, and the imagery is all there, and you watch it and it's special. I felt that about watching 2001 when I was a kid too. Like even though I didn't really know exactly what the message of the movie is, like I loved that movie when I was a kid, because there's just something about it where you're watching something special. And I think a lot of directors hope to be an eighth of what Kubrick was, and there's a reason. Like I haven't seen a bad Kubrick movie yet. I haven't seen a lot of his early stuff. The earliest one is probably Paths of Glory, but that's a masterpiece too. Like that's such a great movie about war and a side of war that you don't see, and it was so innovative in the way it was shot. And I can gush about Kubrick. He's definitely up there on the top of a very short list.
I feel there's very few film fans who wouldn't gush about Kubrick. It's hard to imagine there's someone who goes, Kubrick's a bit too whatever for me. I can't get into his films. Like I don't know who's saying that, but I mean, I'm sure someone does.
Yeah, I mean, they are very art house, but not all of them, but this one is, and there's something still very approachable about it. Like it's friendly art house cinema.
Friendly? I mean, I would say, with the exception of the graphic stuff, maybe, but I feel like because I mean, let's not forget this movie was banned in multiple countries for decades.
There's a lot of depictions. Yeah, there's just a lot of depictions of rape, and there's a lot of rape. It's a very rapey movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key thing. It's just not murder. No one cares about murder in movies. But to the point where there was a crime like soon after the movie that Kubrick was getting harassed for, so he actually asked Warner Bros. To ban it in the UK. Like he requested it, and it wasn't until he died that the movie became available again. So that was such a weird thing. So people were importing the American DVD so they could watch A Clockwork Orange.
It's almost like people take the wrong messages from movies sometimes.
Oh yeah, obviously. Yeah, that it's a lack of
Joker
understanding.
Fans. Fight Club fans.
I was going to go there, but Tara's going for it.
Boondock Saints fans. Actually, that movie's just garbage.
I haven't seen Boondock Saints. I can't comment, but yeah. So yeah. See, if Clockwork Orange came out today, you'd probably have idiots like idolizing Alex and be like, "Oh, he's so free spirited. This is what he wants." So like,
yeah,
he's awful. Don't take lessons from him.
I mean, there's a reason he's the leader, but there's a reason he's the leader in this world that's depicted here, because he's very prone to violence.
Yeah, and what does he do when his leadership is challenged? He immediately acts out in anger and like puts them in their place and says, "No, I'm leader." You know, it was the way back to it was normal, right? And you're like, right. A bit of the ultra van. I can't do the voice, but it's such a thick accent he's got in this.
Yeah, apparently that's his real accent, because everyone else in his little group were Cockney accents, or I think, or maybe that was from the book. I don't know. I just read it in trivia because I don't really know accents. If it's not Arnold Schwarzenegger, I don't know where you're from. I read that he decided to go with his actual accent for the role, just so he seemed different from the rest of the gang.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense. He's good. I looked up a couple of things as well, just because I was curious, and apparently there was an extra chapter added to the book, and this was before the movie, because the writer was kind of annoyed that the extra chapter wasn't in the movie or wasn't adapted in the movie, but he didn't blame Kubrick because it hadn't been released in the US with the extra chapter yet, so he didn't blame Kubrick for it, but he was pissed at this extra chapter. To be honest though, I actually like hearing what the extra chapter was. I'm glad it's not in the movie, because I think it would completely wouldn't work for me. We can talk about what it is when we get into spoilers, and we talk about how the movie ends and what the new ending would be.
I was looking over the trivia, and it said that the original first cut of the movie was like 4 hours long. Not a big surprise there. But then his assistant like burned all the unused footage, so we'll never get that 4-hour cut. It's gone forever.
I can respect that. I can respect him not wanting multiple cuts.
This is the work that he wanted us to see. This is his director's cut, you know.
Yeah, and it's not that awkward thing with The Shining where there's like 2 cuts that no one's even aware there's 2 cuts of. Because there's a US cut and a European cut, and most people don't realize that for years they're watching a particular cut, and the other one's different. Yeah,
you brought that up to me before, and I'm not sure if I've ever seen the non-US cut now.
You probably haven't. I actually watched the US cut for the first time when I reviewed it with Tim for October last year. I intentionally watched the US cut because I wanted to see the differences, and for the most part I didn't amount to much. There was one little moment with like not zombies, like with like corpses in a scene that I thought was like goofy, and I was glad that wasn't in the other cut. But the rest of the stuff that was added was solid. It could have defined some stuff a little bit earlier on, which is interesting. But so Clockwork Orange is ultraviolet.
Is there any additional footage of who's the guy who teaches them about The Shining?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any extra footage with his apartment, which is like the best set ever made in a movie?
Well, you've seen the version that has more footage, not less.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the US cut's the longer one, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you not have those apartment shots before?
I think I had the apartment shots.
His room holds up. It's great.
Because his journey though to the hotel is very different in the European cut. There's like all the stuff where he has to go and try and rent a plow to get to the hotel isn't there. It just like we see one shot of him on a plane in the European cut, and then the next time we see him, he's driving towards the hotel. So.
Okay, but it's not entirely like Deus Ex Machina. It's just like he just shows up all of a sudden. Like you see him. Yeah, he
still gets the inkling, you know, to go. And we still see that part, but it cuts out all the obstacles he has on the way. It just makes it look like he was able to just go. So. But we're not here to talk about The Shining. We're talking about
I know.
Ron Kubrick.
I just wanted to bring up that really awesome room that he has.
So, yes. I love the music in the movie. I love that main theme. It's so, like, off-kilter.
Yeah. And again, just so much classical music is used in it. And it must be because of the success of the soundtrack for 2001: A Space Odyssey, you know, where he had a whole score written out and just decided to try it with more, like other famous composers' pieces of work, and it worked just fine, and if not better. So, I mean, Ludwig van Beethoven is used throughout this whole score as well.
Yeah, so old Ludwig van.
Oh, Ludwig van.
He never says Beethoven. He always just says Ludwig van.
He's on a first name basis.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah. So, yes. Yeah, music's really good. It gives it a really distinct sound. So, I mean, everything we've kind of talking about is just how it looks and sounds and how it feels very unique, because it does feel very unique. Obviously, we're about to go into spoilers and start talking about the plot and the whatnot. But, yes, obviously, if you haven't seen Clockwork Orange, absolutely see Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Unless you're like 12, in which case maybe wait a few years. But
yeah.
Other than that, should see Clockwork Orange. So I'll give a spoiler warning. So full spoilers for Clockwork Orange from this point on. I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to I need to scroll up. Thank you to David Short, Alison M. Fordyce, Cindy Palacios, and Tyler Hess. They're all patrons at the $20 or above tier. But you don't have to be a patron at that tier. You can be a patron for $1. Isn't that right, Tara?
Did you just call me Tyler?
No, I said I went Tala, and I went Tara. I corrected myself.
Oh, I thought he called me Tyler. I mean, that's okay. He pays to have his name dropped, so.
Yeah, no, it was more of just a flub of the sound, and then I went back.
Well, yeah, if you like what we do and you want to support the channel, and if you want to head to our Patreon page to patreon.com/MalfuzzTV and donate just $1 a month, you'll get bonus episodes of the Ace, and you'll also be supporting the channel. And there's a back catalog now of the Trancers saga that we are currently working through. I think we're halfway through. You can watch Judge Dredd, see how we feel about some B movies, and the last there'll be plenty more to come.
Yeah, the last one that went up was Free Jack. That was the one that just went up. For this
that was a blast.
Yeah, and we got a hoot. We got another to go into the 70s month. There's a 70s bonus movie in April in the back half of the month, so you can look forward to that. All right, so we'll kick off the movie then, work our way through here, because I feel there's going to be a lot to say in some of these scenes. Because the opening is him in the Millet Bar and just sort of the intentions of the night. He's waxing lyrically, and essentially him and his group have a sequence of events here where they go through a few things, and if you weren't really sure exactly, are these good guys or are they truly evil? Because the first thing they do is we get that beautiful shot of them coming down the tunnel with the shadows on the ground in front of them, and they beat a homeless man up, and it's like, okay, these are assholes. This is awful. But I feel like the start of the next scene almost wants to lull you into the idea of okay, maybe they're not that bad though, because this other gang are about to rape a woman, right? They're ripping their clothes off, and it's very uncomfortable. And then Alex and his droogs show up, and it's like, oh, are they going to? But he doesn't care. It's almost like a movie that we're going to talk about that we've recorded already for 70s month, with a boy and his dog. There's a scene at the start of that which kind of has a similar thing almost, where it reveals what the main character's like through what he chooses. I mean, if anything, that was even worse, because in that movie he's basically, oh, I could have used her, but in this movie it's like, no, we just want to fight. They're like, we don't care about her. She'll run off in the chaos, but we just want to fight this other gang. It's
such a cool set piece too. Like, just do it in an abandoned theater. I don't know, there's so many wide shots where it's just still for a long time, and then it's like everything is beautiful despite the violence and depictions of rape that's going on screen. But it's such a beautiful set piece, and everything, it looks like it's been abandoned. Like, there's just mattresses everywhere, and it doesn't look dirty, but it looks just like no one's been there for a long time.
But I think it's worth talking about the fact that with this scene, it's a very kind of over-the-top fight scene with these four guys, and they're breaking things over each other's backs, and they're smashing chairs over each other. It's very.
And it seems to be a lot of there's more than one gang like this too that we're that's in this world. Like, just these young kids just form groups of four, but and just go around doing violence all the time.
But the point I was getting to, though, they're having this over-the-top fight scene, breaking stuff over each other. And I think it's interesting like how kind of absurdly theatrical it is, and where is it taking place? It's taking place in a theater. I think that's a very intentional choice to show that for them this is just entertainment. Them going to have this fight with this other gang is just their night's amusement.
Oh yeah, and like the other gang is like mid-rape, and then when they show up, they're just like, okay, they're like excited to fight. Like this is what we do now. Like forget the rape. Like we're about to fight. Like this is. They're overjoyed almost about the fact that they're about to, spar off with another gang.
Yeah. So I really like that element of the scene, just the setting, like you say, all those wide shots, and then we get that like the ridiculous shot of them in the car, where they're all kind of together, going really fast, and they're just kind of ducking under like a truck or whatever it is. But again, it's so maniacal. It's so they're just having the time of their lives, don't care about anything in the world, and they don't care about anything around them. They're
it's just everything that we hate about teenagers, but it's like all amplified to the extreme end.
Which is where we get to the big kind of where this is how evil they really are, kind of thing, where they go to this house. And Alex from the other side of the door is like, hey, can we use your phone? There's been an accident. It's been a very terrible accident. It's very, very risky. And it's this writer, Mr. Alexander, and his wife, and she does eventually let him in. And of course, they immediately just run in. And he's got this ridiculous mask on with the big long nose. Again, very phallic. There's a lot of phallic stuff in this, even when it's not the penis stuff itself. Because some of it's just straight up, this is a penis statue, but some of it's also a bit more, I don't want to say subtle, but just shaped. And we have this thing where they attack him, they sort of pin him down and make him watch as Alex rapes his wife. And he's singing in the rain as he does this. But even the idea of, because obviously one of the things that we said, the milk bar, we should really address the fact that what they drink, I mean, there's other things in it, but they drink milk. Milk is their thing, right? And the milk actually comes out of like a teat, like dispense, like, the pump.
Yeah, it's a very like it's a statue of a woman who's in this like very sexual pose, but like the milk comes out of her tits. Her teats.
Her teats, yes.
She's not a cow. Yeah.
It's just the idea of milking into a glass. Like I feel like it becomes a teat in that context. Right, but like the fact that when he's doing this, the first thing he does is he cuts holes in the wife's suit over her breasts, so he goes straight for that location. He goes straight for there, almost to assert dominance. The idea that like they've got milk on demand because they're in control. I don't think like I mean, obviously there's elements of sexism in the movie. I don't think that's maybe one of the major themes, but I do think that there's an element of that here where, like, part of the power and control, they try and have it over the other men, but I think they're trying to dominate the female side of the species. Like a lot of the symbolism of like, no, you're here for milk, so that's the first part about you that I'm going to address before he does anything else. There's like a really kind of maniacal, deluded like sensibility to him the way he does that. So yeah, so all this stuff goes on, and he goes home, and it's weird because he goes for a drink first, right? And he talks about how there's like the rich and high society are sitting there, and he kind of pauses because he's kind of making fun of them, but then between the jukebox tracks, one of the women who's in this group starts singing, and he talks about how beautiful it was and how much he likes it, and it introduces this element to the movie where the one thing that we can relate to, the one thing that makes him kind of a normal human, is how much he loves music. That is the one thing that's not weird or depraved about him, is that he loves music. Yeah. And we see more examples of that as it goes on, but I think it's really interesting how it introduces that, where it's the one thing where he stops being a little shit about the people he's talking about and just almost bonds, and without even talking to them, just the way he narrates about them, it feels he talks about them differently because of that moment, because of the music.
Yeah, he goes almost like catatonic and doesn't, he gets mad and basically in a little bit of a fight. Well, it turns into an incident that gets worse, that has consequences, where he basically just hits his, what does he call him? The brood? No?
Oh, the droogs.
The droogs? Yeah.
Yeah,
He's one of his droogs.
Yeah, it's the chubby one, yeah. And
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's always picking on him.
Because he was interrupting the song.
Yeah. Yeah, he's always picking on him. So he goes home, and we see he lives with his parents. Because I think up until this point in the movie, like you'd be forgiven for not realizing these are teenagers. I mean, there may be a quick line about it, but to be honest, it feels like, I mean, these could just be like 22-year-olds, like, and the actors probably are. Like, I mean, that's
I think they're older, but
yeah.
I think Alex is supposed to be like 14 or something.
He is in the book. He's not in the movie.
Okay,
and the movie,
he's still living at home, and he's probably, I don't know if they even have high school, but he's high school age.
No, they mentioned that he's supposed to be in school. They mentioned that in the movie. Okay. But they specifically aged him up to 17 or 18, vaguely, without saying exactly which he was, just because it was going to be too disturbing to have a 14-year-old doing this.
Yeah.
So that's a fine choice.
Find out more of our thoughts when we review the other movie.
What, A Boy and His Dog?
Boy and His Dog, yeah.
He's not maybe 14 in that, is he?
You don't think so? I think he was. I think they even said he was 14.
All right, I didn't look 14. 16 I'd buy. I don't know if I'd buy 14 though.
Yeah.
But so we see him go home, and he goes to his bedroom. He's got big speakers, so he loves his music. He's got a pet snake, and then I think that because there's a lot of religious imagery the more we go throughout the movie, and I think that's the snake, Garden of Eden, the temptation, that there's obvious stuff to sort of bring in there.
Yeah, plus he's depicted as such an evil guy, and snakes are terrifying, and why would you ever want to have one as a pet unless you were evil?
Exactly. Serpent, blah blah blah, usually. But it's funny, the one thing that I can almost relate to with Alex is when his mum tries to wake him up for school, and he's like, I'm not feeling very well, I should sleep it off, because if I don't get my sleep, I'll be even worse later. Like, I'm like, okay. I mean, admittedly, this wasn't 18-year-old me, this was more like 12-year-old me trying to get out of school, not
oh yeah, I think I might be sick.
Yeah,
I should go to school. My throat's all scratchy.
Yeah. And he gets up, and one of the probably, I mean, it's weird to say this is the first weird scene, because obviously the scenes before this are really shocking in how sort of gleeful they are in their violence and whatnot. But but weird just on of its own case though is when this guy comes to see him, it's like he's I don't know what his exact role was, like guidance counselor maybe. I
don't know. I almost got the impression that he was like their lawyer, like their family attorney or something, because doesn't he kind of represent him when he gets arrested later? He shows up.
I don't know if it's representation. I feel like I almost feel like he's been in trouble before, and this is like he's like, I don't want to say parole officer, but like his
yeah, but his parents also seem surprised, like they don't know what he does at night, and
That's
they
true.
think that they seem to be surprised by the fact that their son is juvenile delinquent.
They're willfully ignorant. They don't want to know.
That could be it too. Yeah. He is, very much just a nice boy when he's with his parents.
Yeah. Because he gets up and he's in his like tighty whities, right? And he walks past this room, and there's just a guy. This guy's just sitting in the bed in like his parents' room or whatever it is. And he sort of like Alex leans against the door, and he's like, all right, what are you doing here then? And this guy, he speaks to him like he's grooming him. Right? Mm-hmm. The way he leans in and goes, "You'll be a good boy, yes." Like, I'm like,
there's a mild sense of perversion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, which is only multiplied by 1,000 when he grabs his cock.
He doesn't grab it. He like slams it. Like it's like it's an aggressive. It really seems like it hurt.
Yeah, it's an aggressive grab. Yes, he grabs it, and this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where he's doing this to assert his dominance, to say, I'm in charge, you do what I say, and you have to, and, Alex kind of like sort of shrugs, sort of brushes him off, and sort of, but like, that's kind of what the moment is. It's him saying, yeah. And this is kind of your first sign in the movie, that this is not just Alex and his friends. That's even the people
this
who
whole
are,
world is very strange, yeah.
Even the people who are like in positions of power are also kind of like him. And that's something the movie kind of explores as we go. So when we get to the next dick grabbing scene, which is a weird sentence to say, when we get to the next dick grabbing scene, I'll really get into that. But
Do you like the part where he drinks out of the glass that's got the dentures in it?
Why would they just pick up a random glass that's in?
I don't know. It was a weird bit of comedy.
Why would you think that this dad or whoever like this glass belongs to? Why would he keep a glass of whiskey or whatever he thinks it is beside his bed that would just be there when he's out of the house? Like,
I don't know. I think maybe the real concern is why aren't the teeth like in the dad's mouth right now?
Maybe he's got two sets. Maybe he alternates.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and if not, who did it belong to?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely his parents, like, because his mom's wigs were all lined up on the back window.
Yeah, that's actually one of those weird little sci-fi elements, is that her hair's like purple or something. It's like blue or purple in different scenes.
Well, every female has like a wig or just really crazy colored hair.
Yeah, so he doesn't go to school, obviously, because he's a little truant. He goes to the and this is again one of those things where it's doing future, but the way he talks about or he looks at the charts, the top 10 and stuff, I'm like, this is so ancient. Like, people don't really talk about music this way anymore. But he's looking at music, and he runs into these two girls about his age or maybe slightly older, but not by much, and we see how suave he is, I guess, because he just kind of like leans in, and so they've both got these lollipops, right? And one is very like phallic shaped, right? It's almost almost to the point where it's like, was this just a cock club? Because you get those things where
definitely. It's like a party.
yeah. You get
like
those,
a bachelorette party thing.
yeah. I think they're big in holiday as well. If you go to like tourist locations in like Spain and stuff, like they sell a lot of them for reasons. But the other girls though, like hers is like, it's like it melted by accident, so it's like sort of limped over. And there's a moment where Alex looks at it and goes, "What's the matter with that one then, love?" And there's something so delightful about the way he interacts with people, even though he's really awful.
I know, right? He's so fun to watch, and he's really got a lot of charisma. He's just maybe like a natural leader. I don't know. He's
a smarmy prick. That's the correct term. But he's very engrossing to watch. As a smarmy prick.
There's just so much energy. Like even when he speaks, it is like a bit like he's shouting, but like in a fun way.
I mean, when he gets to the parts where he's talking to someone in authority, he's always kind of challenging them and always sort of like making them second guess themselves. Like that's kind of his goal. But here he sort of invites them back to his to listen to the music because he has a proper sound system, and we get these sped up to music threesome. And my favorite part of this is that like one of the girls starts putting her clothes back on and is ready to leave, but when he's done with the other girl, he gets up and starts taking her clothes off again. So they kind of like go back and forth a couple times. It's a whole thing. And I don't know what to read into this scene so much to say that maybe like, because like obviously the one connection we have to his like proper humanity is his music love, that maybe this is, for lack of a better term, a healthier sex scene than obviously, because the other sex scene we've had with him was a rape scene, right?
Well, yeah, like clearly he's able to have sex like whenever he wants. Like he's got the ability to be suave and to pick up the ladies, but he still chooses rape,
Yeah, which maybe makes it more almost more sick in a way, that like he does that out of choice because he enjoys it because of what it is, rather than because it's this feeling of necessity. Not that that makes it any better, but like there's kind of a sick, like. This is a weird comparison. We just did Jurassic World. The moment where Chris Pratt stands up and says he's killing them for sport. Like it's basically that.
He's the Indominus Rex.
He's the Indominus Rex, yeah. That's a weird comparison to make, but it came out of my head. So he does that, and he comes down after his day of love making is a really weird thing to call it in this context, but he comes down after his long hard day of sex, and his friends are all hanging about, and they're there with like an ultimatum. Like the was it Georgie? Is the one who's kind of like Georgie. He's the one who's kind of essentially sticking up for the chubbier guy, and he's like, look, we've got a plan and we don't want you picking on him anymore. And it's like, oh, we've thought about this, have we? All right, let's hear more about this plan. And in his narration the entire time, because this is the famous moment where there's slow motion walking like down by the water, and he's like, I had my leadership like questioned or whatever. And obviously that's not what he says literally. He phrases it in a wacky. I almost wish I had the script in front of me so I could just like say what he said, because it's like so fun. But he's like, just then I kenned what to do, and then he just in slow motion like sort of swings his cane or whatever he's walking with.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite little details in the costume in here, actually, just like his regular white suit that he has, is that he's got like an eyeball in his sleeve, and I thought that was interesting because obviously a heart in your sleeve is an expression, and I thought it was interesting that he's got an eyeball there instead. Just think about it.
Maybe there's something they're trying to say that I'm not getting, but
like he's always.
I did notice the eyeball. Like it was just a scene, just a hint of something grotesque. Yeah, on his clean white suit. I don't know. Well,
obviously the famous scene with the eyes comes later with the videos and the conditioning, but I was wondering if like your heart in your sleeve obviously means that you're open to like being hurt because you put yourself out there, you put your emotions kind of on show. I wonder if this is kind of a subversion of that, where it's like he's always like watching, like he kind of hides it of who he is to everyone, but it's kind of like he's also being blatant with it, and it's kind of there, it's out there, there's no holding back. I don't know, someone can analyze that better than I can probably, but it's there. But yeah, it's a wonderful shot. I love how there's multiple shots in this scene of him getting into the water, and I'm like, man, Kubrick, you were a dick to this actor. You made him do this like 4 to 5 times at least.
Yeah, definitely.
Which would be fine.
He was not known for like a small amount of takes.
No, which would be totally fine, except for the fact that he has to be completely dry every time they do it to begin with. So like the amount of time it would have taken to like get him out, give him a new set of clothes, dry him off, like
yeah,
a lot of effort. That's all I'm saying. It's a lot of effort. But so we cut to him, and he hears about this heist they want to do, this fitness farm, the cat lady. But this is the scene that I was quoting earlier, where he's like, oh, so we're all back to normal then, right as rain, right, and everyone says right one by one, but of course it's building up to a betrayal, right? So they go to this cat lady, and this is where this weird thing, it cuts to the cat lady, right, and she's doing like her aerobics or whatever, and there's cats around, and I'm looking at it, and it took me, and I've seen this before, but it's been a while, so I'd forgotten about this. So I was sitting there for like 30 seconds before I started to notice the paintings on the wall, and they're all these like absurdly erotic paintings of like people with their legs open, and like all these like they're a little abstract, but
it's all very pornographic, and it's not. It's like it's an art style that maybe could pass as like, modern art, but it's also it's not very tasteful art. It is still, that famous quote where, I don't know the line between art and porn, or I can't explain it, but I know it when I see it. Like, I think that applies here. But I think, again, like we brought up earlier, I think this just amplifies what this future is. Like, everybody is extreme, and including people who we see who are not part of a violent gang, but even everyday stuff like art is become hyper violent, or like even the pornographic images are not, it's not like nice porn. It all looks like very uncomfortable, awkward, like pornographic images. Like it's not like a naked lady, but like, it's really, it's kind of gross.
It's kind of gross.
That's what I'm trying to say.
That's a soundbite. Put that in the next Blu-ray release. It's kind of gross. Tara.
Yeah. Like it's I don't know. But I think it's just, again, showing that this world is, he might not be entirely to blame for who he is, because I think he just lives in a world of extremes.
Well, yeah, I mean, to going back again about the penis being the power, or representing his power, like, and not just in a sexual way, like everything he does is kind of like, if it's not about his sexual desires, it's about his libido and like sort of showing his dominance. And what do men do when they're like measuring sticks? They're basically, everything's a metaphor for penises, right? So the fact that he actually grabs this penis stick, because he tries his trick from before, he tries to pull I need to use the phone, and because of what he says sounds similar to this other story, which apparently was in the papers, and she like calls the police. Like, he comes in and he finds this phallic statue, and Interestingly, the woman tries to defend herself with a statue of Beethoven. I thought that was a really interesting touch.
Yeah.
Like it's this giant.
That on this watch too.
Yeah, it's a giant penis statue that he's holding versus a small Beethoven statue, and it's almost like she's defending herself with this one little part of his humanity that he actually has. I thought that was a really interesting visual to make that work. But the camera work here is absolutely over the top in a wonderful way. Where as he's driving the tip of the penis into her head. It's almost like a POV shot from the tip of the penis, like going right into her face, and she's like, like, it's really absurdly over the top and just insane. So he actually kills her here. He doesn't know he's killed her.
I think she dies later. I think
it's in the hospital.
I think she dies in the hospital. Yeah.
But when he goes to open the door and let the other guys in because he had to sneak in, one of them's waiting with a bottle of milk and he smashes it over his face. So again, we're using milk here as a symbolism. Of using the feminine substance, I suppose, for lack of a better word, to defeat him, kind of thing. There's a lot of male female sort of themes and imagery going on with a lot of this stuff. So this is when we learn that the cops are kind of just as bad as he is, right? Because the cop that's interrogating him talks kind of like he does. He's kind of a thug, just like Alex is. He just happens to be wearing a badge and happens to be on the side of the state. This is the second dick grabbing scene where Alex grabs his dick to basically say, "You're not in charge, but you're not better than me. Like, I can be in control of this moment anytime I want." Like, that's very much what he's doing, and it's very reminiscent of when the other guy did it to him, who does show up in this scene. Is it, you've been a very naughty boy, haven't you, Alex?
Yeah, his usual spiel.
Yeah.
But he seems excited by it. He just comes off so pervy.
On a bizarre related note, I was reading a couple of comics before we came out to record for the Previously in the Multiverse podcast tomorrow, and I was reading an old Batman comic, Detective Comics, and there's a scene in it where Batman has to run to a fire, so he tells Robin, Jason Todd, to hose him down, but the speech bubble is like, "Yes, keep hosing me, yes, all nice and wet," and I'm like, why does this sound like he's grooming a young boy? Like, I'm almost expecting the next panel to be slower.
Lower.
Yes, it's just, I don't know, this is weird that because this guy talking to Alex is that voice. It's like, "Yes, do it there, boy, slower, yes, you've been naughty, yes." It's great. I almost want to spin off of him, just, I don't know, just going about his day.
He's such a bizarre character. Yeah.
Does he tell this to everyone? Does he? Let's say he's picking up a sandwich at Subway. He's like, put some lettuce and onions. Yes, pickles. Yes, put in the hot sauce.
Naughty. Sweet onion sauce.
Yes, put it in the oven. I want it hot and spicy. Yeah.
You're doing a little bit of Bane.
I apologize. I've got an empty can here. I can probably do Ben. You think darkness is your ally? You merely adopted it. I was born in it, molded by it. All right, so yes, my Bane voice isn't a million miles away from my pervy Clockwork Orange did voice. Okay, not a million miles away. But so of course he's getting sent off to prison. And he's spat on, of course, as well at the end of this scene. And he goes to prison, and I love the prison guard, like the head prison guard.
He is the best. He's kind of a proto this drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket also, although that came much later. And I don't think I think he was a real drill sergeant. So, but yeah, I love him too. He's so loud, so I don't know, angry, but I think he's following a set of rules. You know, like, this is just how things are done. This is very by the book.
Yeah, well, it shows you kind of the hypocrisy of the state, because he's very different from every other character. But like, there is that moment though, because they make him like stand behind the line, and he says, you say sir, kind of things. But my favorite line from him, absolutely, no question, is when they make him strip in front of the table, and it's doing that thing where it's just hiding his dick and nothing else. Well, it's really just hiding the tip. You see part of it, but like it's hiding the tip.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like it's hidden, and then it's covered by a box. But then they take the box away.
Yeah, it's almost like Kubrick would say, "You didn't think I was going to show you, did you?"
Yeah.
Here it is.
It's definitely just surprise.
But it's when he's naked with the prison guard just says out, "Have you now or ever been a homosexual?" And he yells out homosexual in such a quick way, and Alex just sort of smirkingly goes, "No, sir." It's just really like smug, and it's I don't know, that line.
He seems uncomfortable asking it too.
Yeah.
I don't know, because he asked the question differently than he asked all the other questions, which were very uniform.
Yeah,
But this one came off a bit awkward for him.
This is clearly an old timer who's not comfortable with that question, but he's having to ask it. And the very next scene, because it skips ahead a little bit, and he's like helping the prison like pastor, and there's a couple of guys in the pews who are kind of like making kissy faces at him because he's the young new prisoner.
And it suggests some time has passed here though, because he's helping I think he's been there like 2 years at this point, because he's saying in his narration he's saying that the new prisoners are the ones that are doing the kissy faces at him.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I wasn't sure if it was 2 years yet, because I know it's 2 years by the time he moves on and goes to other stuff. But yeah, so it's interesting to even talk about that in the context, given what we've said so far about the idea of the penis and how that kind of drives what they're doing at all times. Which again, that's kind of what satire does, right? Is it takes something that's kind of true and turns it up to like a ridiculous number.
Yeah.
Because we talk about how so many guys with egos are driven because it's like, oh, they can't back down because they see that as an affront to them, and they have to swing their schlong to feel proud.
Poetic.
Schlong's a good word, because we've once debated if dong's the best word for penis. I think schlong's a pretty good one to combat it.
But dong is so musical.
Oh, that's fair. Schlong's pretty good though. I think schlong's in the top 5. Come on.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
All right, so he's sick of being there. He's been really good with the pastor. He's been trying to do his best with him, and he's heard rumors of this experimental treatment, which conditions the prisoners, and they don't have to serve their sentence. They just
Yeah, he's sentenced to 14 years.
Yeah, so he's told to the pastor, and this is again one of the big moments of the movie in terms of like just sort of spelling out the themes for people, where it says, well, no, this thing is going to take away your choice, and if you have no choice, then you're not really a man anymore. You're not really a person. So, and that's obviously and that's the biggest theme of the movie is free will.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
No question.
Or just the idea of reformation. Because I mean, he's sent to jail for 14 years to serve a sentence and be reformed, like through punishment, and that's not working. And then he goes and he's helping out the pastor and he's reading the Bible, but he doesn't read the Bible like people read the Bible.
No,
he loves it because he loves the violence, and he can see himself like going through as a Roman whipping Jesus while he's carrying the cross, and we get the visualization of it. Yeah. Like he is super into the Bible, but for all the parts.
Yeah, but all of the early stuff, he doesn't like the later stuff, but it was more the lessons of Jesus and whatnot. He likes the Old Testament. He likes the violence.
Like he cannot be reformed. Like his character has zero arc, because he like, no matter what situation he's put in where he's being punished, or he's he's being more restricted in some way, like he just will find a way to live in that world and be like, okay, this is it now. Like he seems unfazed by everything, it seems, with the exception of the conditioning treatment that he gets. But that again is not really reformation, because he has
exactly.
When we get to it, we'll talk about it. But
well, no, exactly. Like it's taking
away his choice.
It's not rehabilitation. Rehabilitation.
You can choose to do something good or do something bad. Like taking away the option to do the bad thing doesn't make you a good person. Like it just
in fact,
you can't do it.
I have an excellent
Same thing.
I have an excellent comparison here from the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where Spike in season 4 gets chipped. He gets a chip in his head that stops him from hurting any living thing. So he's still an evil vampire, but he can't hurt anything that's living. So, and this like actually is very reminiscent of it. And obviously, that if anything, it's the other way around. But I just in the context of the idea that if Alex goes to do something that's bad, he gets this pain, this sickness. That's essentially what happens to Spike in season 4 onwards of Buffy, is that he can't do anything without feeling this mind-numbing pain in his head. So,
Fascinating.
Really interesting. Don't be sarcastic with me.
Wow.
And
Sounds like a really good show.
Yeah, Joe's a really good show. Shows where people don't eat on the show. That's a really good show. Did you just do that in defiance? How dare you? How... I've been so offended all my life. All right, so basically he kind of pulls a fast one because this chancellor's coming around to like sort of select a prisoner for this new experimental program, and he speaks out to get noticed, and the guy's like, yep, I'll take him. And they send him to this thing, and he's given drugs, and he's put in a chair. Of course, the famous shot of him with the eyes wide open and the things all open his eyes. He's not allowed to shut his eyes. And he's showing basically the sort of things that he's done. We see people beating up a homeless man. We see people raping someone, and then it gets even more extreme. We see like the Holocaust, and we see footage of all these horrible things. And he's not allowed to not look at it.
And he's also been injected with something.
Yes, there's drugs to go along with this, yeah. So they're doing this experimental conditioning, and what's interesting about it is that through accident, it just so happens that Beethoven's Ninth Symphony is playing over some of the footage, and it kind of makes that song have the same reaction as the violence does, where if he hears that music again, he will also react in pain. And I think it's interesting that that's kind of almost the only real punishment for him, is that one of the songs that he loves, he can no longer listen to because it's been taken away from him.
Right. And it is still, like, he still can't, like, it is effective. Like, he's not able to choose violence after this. But yeah, he's also not able to have the one thing that made him like slightly like a human, a normal person.
Yeah, that's the paradox of it.
He like it's uncomfortable, and he wants the images to stop. But when the music comes on and he realizes what he's listening to, he begs, and he starts lying, and he says, "I've been cured. You should let me go. Like this is good. Like I'll never do violence again." But because that's the one. Like you said, the one punishment that it really is. And
that's why the title. This is why the title is the title, right? Is the whole idea that they take him and they take away the one thing that makes him human, with everything else that they're trying to make him stop doing, is that because the whole point of the title is that it looks like an organic thing. An orange is an organic, real thing, but it's been programmed to work like a mechanical thing. Hence the title, A Clockwork Orange.
I'm not gonna lie, I looked it up because I had watched this movie a few times, and then I finally went, I wonder what A Clockwork Orange means.
But it makes sense when you think about his character, right? The idea that they've programmed
he's been programmed
to act a way that's not in his nature, and therefore he's the Clockwork Orange. So it's a really smart title in that sense. But so he gets out, but they have this like demonstration first where they have him in front of this little group, including the prison guard. And I did like that the prison guard was kind of like smirking a little bit when he was in pain. I was like, yeah. This is great.
Except when the naked, beautiful woman steps out, his reaction is so funny.
He's like, oh, no. It's just...
No, he has like just this like staring with his jaw on the floor. When she comes out.
Right. Obviously, the one guy who's against all this is the priest, the pastor. He's like audibly against this.
Well, he obviously would know. He spends his life studying good versus evil. Like he knows the whole idea of people, how important it is for someone to choose to be good and not be forced to be good.
But we see a demonstration where someone comes out and belittles him, insults him. Alex just keeps, trying to get out of it. But the guy, hits him and then makes him lick his shoe twice, in fact. And then, but again, what I liked about this is that it kind of went through the stages. Like, okay, because the order of things we saw him beat up a homeless man, and we saw him in a fight with people, and we saw him rape someone. And it skips the homeless man in this case, I think. But like after this, it goes to again, we have this topless woman comes out, and the camera angle here is like so perfect. Like he's literally in a fetal position as she walks towards him. He is as little as he could possibly be. In fact, even the framing, actually, I loved at the start of this scene, is that when he's brought out on stage, the perception of where the camera is and where the guy who's the doctor who's like giving this presentation is, or the chancellor it might even be, he looks really small in the frame compared to him. He looks like a little boy almost. It really sort of gives you a good visual here. But he he sort of like looks up at the boobs and he's like, oh my god. Boobs.
He's reaching.
I can almost hear the 2001 music in my head, the dun, 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 as his hands are going up.
Well, the way she comes out, is like that kind of presentation. She is a monolith of a woman.
Yeah, and his hands are going up, and he almost gets there. He's within an inch of like properly grasping the boobs of youth or joy or whatever, and he gets this pain in his head, and he can't, and he backs down, and he can't do it.
Yeah. He does this thing where it seems to be like a involuntary response of belching. He just starts burping a lot, and it sounds like he does sound miserable. Like it sounds a bit like he feels like he's about to throw up at every moment, which would be a very uncomfortable position to be.
Yeah, and this is where we get into kind of the White Bear Black Mirror stuff, where he's let out, and it's basically step by step he goes through like a series of like really awful experiences, and it's that the audience is kind of left to decide, does he deserve all of these awful experiences, or is this too much, or is this an unjust punishment? But so one by one he goes home.
He can't defend himself.
Yeah, but he goes home and he basically sees his mum and dad, and he says hello to both of them, and there's this like guy sitting on the couch, and it's not addressed for a long time, and then eventually just leads to his dad, goes like, Dad, there seems to be a gentleman sitting there, and then they explain, well, we had to rent out your room, son, you understand, and like it would be fair to Joe to kick him out. He's paid rent for next month already. They really like lay it on thick. So he's lost his parents, he's lost his home. And it's it's this punishment of kind of like extreme degrees, and then he goes outside, he runs into a homeless person, he gives the homeless person some money, he's nice to him, but then the homeless guy recognizes him, he's like, oh, you're the guy who beat me up, and all the homeless people start beating him up. So and this is even the order of the way things happen. It's the homeless person and the sort of revenge for that, and then it's his friends, because he stumbles into two police officers, and who is it but two of his droogs? It's the two that betrayed him.
I think it's also like saying a lot about just how the police system of this time, and maybe even today, attracts what kind of people are attracted to that sort of profession.
Well,
where you can be in power and you can cause violence without too many questions.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said earlier about the cop that was interrogating him being just like Alex. It's
like, oh, of course, like these people would be drawn to being cops, and also the cops would hire these types of people. I'm not saying all policemen are bad. I respect the blue.
Yeah, but they take him out to a place in the middle of nowhere, they dunk his head in water, they beat him up.
His head's underwater for a long time. I don't know if you were thinking this when you were watching this scene, but like, do you think he had a way to breathe while they're shooting the scene, or did he really hold his breath that long? Because it's all done in one take, it's uninterrupted, and it's a long time that his head's underwater.
Maybe there was like a little respirator or something. I don't know. It's they shot this in like 1970, so I'm not sure where the respirator technology was at that point. Maybe there was like a little gas or air, I guess a gas tank, a little oxygen tank inside with a little breather.
Yeah, but you would see bubbles, right? I didn't see bubbles.
Yeah, maybe he's just holding his breath.
Maybe he didn't really hold his breath that long. Yeah.
I'm sure if he felt like he was drowning, he would just like, maybe there was like a way to like tap one of their shoes or something, then they would like, okay, he's struggling here.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. I was very impressed by how long the scene went on.
It's this point where you're like, he's going to run into his victims next. He has to. Like, it has to be like the house he went to before, and of course we find out that the wife, of course, died because she was too traumatized from the events. But And again, we have the kind of these themes coming back in here, where Alexander, the writer, he now has like a man helper who's this really big, tough-looking dude who does a lot of weightlifting. So, and it's never like implied that there's actually like a sexual relationship between them, but you know, given some of the other things that have come up in this movie about dominance, it's almost like to make himself feel better, he's gotten the biggest like sort of beefy man he could find. Because
he's in the same spot that his wife was when, you know, we saw them the first time. Like Mr. Alexander, is that his name?
Yes.
I think I wrote it down. Is typing again at his desk, and it pans over where before we saw his wife, this very frail woman, just like reading. Now we see this guy who's super bulked up and he's like lifting weights and stuff. It pans over the same way. You're like, oh, he found it.
It's the same shot
that makes him feel safe.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning because he was crippled in the attack, right? He's paralyzed.
Yeah.
And again, the idea that, let's say, I mean, we don't know for sure or not if his penis is functional, but let's just assume that it isn't. And the idea that that's why he found a big man. He was like, my penis, I have no strength in my penis anymore, so therefore I have to get someone who's big and masculine and can protect me, and this is what this big dude's for. You know, there's something there from a thematic point of view. But of course, Alex stumbles into this house, and he doesn't recognize him. Alexander doesn't recognize him because he was wearing a mask that night, of course, right? And he's going to give him help, but he does recognize him from the papers, though. He knows this is the guy who was released from the other crime, and he was conditioned. And there's actually something
I was going to ask you if you thought, like, for sure that he didn't recognize him right away.
No, he did. What's the point then of the scene where he hears them singing? Because that's the point of that scene, is that he hears the singing, and that's what makes him realize it's him. It's
also like he's gone through this, you know, type of conditioning too, where he hears a song that triggers a visceral response. Like he goes into like this really painful position.
Oh yeah,
straining.
There's a shot from underneath him looking up at the old man, Alexander, as he hears him singing.
Yeah, he's got his eyes rolled back in his head. He's like convulsing, and because he hears the song, the trigger song, it's almost like he went through the same kind of.
Which is again, I think intentional and a statement in and of itself. Would you stop eating goddamn blueberries? There's a statement in and of itself where
is it really that bad?
It's distracting me, all right.
Okay.
It's a statement in and of itself where he like, you know, like the idea that what they put through Alex is essentially just this eye for the eye mentality of they kind of put him through a kind of something that will be just as traumatizing to him as what happened to Alexander. So we have this kind of thing where they're both kind of reacting in similar ways to something. But one of the things that this scene introduces, or not even this scene, that's kind of introduced before with the Chancellor talking about why they're doing what they're doing with this conditioning and why they're trying this. But there's hints of a political election going on. There's hints of opposing forces, and they make it very clear in this scene that Alexander is a supporter of the opposition. He's not a supporter of the Chancellor. He's a supporter of whoever's running against him, of whatever the other party is. He doesn't want conditioning. He doesn't want this to be the future. So he's very helpful. He helps them. He gives them food. But one of my favorite lines, actually, or not even line, but just line delivery, is after he knows who Alex is, and they've got Alex down for like food, and he's eating like spaghetti. He just shouts at him at one point. He's like, "How's the food?" I love it. I love the way that he says that line.
This movie's so funny.
But and he has a couple of friends come over who interview Alex, and he basically kind of admits that they were playing this one track, this Beethoven's Ninth, and so once he knows that this is basically Alexander's chance to torture him with music, so he tortures him with Beethoven's Ninth, which makes Alex jump out the window of because he's in like the upper attic kind of area of the house. Mm-hmm. And it's actually, I really like how it's shot. Obviously they had him really jump. Obviously under the camera there'd been a giant inflatable thing or whatever, but
yeah, I'm sure it was very fun for Malcolm McDowell.
But you can see
he deserved a little bit of playtime after his retinas got scratched up from the
I know
the tools in his eye.
I did not like the look of that at all. It made me feel so but it just looks great because you actually can see it's him, and you see him, he sort of leaps down and flips. But he ends up in the hospital. He's in a cast. He's all banged up, and kind of the themes kind of come together in the movie here. although I will say this, there's a moment where he's like moaning in pain because he wakes up from a coma, and after every time he moans, he's like, oh, it's like you hear like, like something. I'm like, is that another patient? Are they hurt? Like, what's going on here? It sounds
yeah, they're like communicating through like pain moans.
But it turns out like across from his bed there's like a curtain with another bed, and like a nurse and a doctor come out, and she's like half naked and like she's still, and we're really
she's just full exposed when she walks out. This movie's funny.
Yeah, what got it for me was that she's not even like finished putting her boobs away when she goes over to check on him, and she's like, he's conscious, doctor, he's conscious, and I'm like, yes, which means he can see you. maybe button up your shirt before you go over to check on him. Just a thought. But I guess they feel guilty because they're kind of being negligent. This is Kubrick's version. You know how like Friday the 13th, like Mrs. Voorhees is really mad because the counselors were having sex when they were supposed to be looking after the kids. This is Kubrick's demented version of that. The nurse and the doctor were having sex when they're supposed to be looking after the patients.
Yeah, but I think it's also just another way of showing how like nobody in this dystopian future is all that good.
Sure, yeah.
Even the doctors and stuff like are just constantly distracted by perversion, and it's everybody's giving into the things that we're supposed to restrain from.
Yeah, well, the point is that everyone is driven by their libido. That's everyone's just driven by that, and there's no filters. Everyone's just given into it. So, so the parents show up. I mean, that's it. The parents don't seem to be like that. There's definitely kind of a willful ignorance in the people who aren't like that, I guess, is how I'd say it. But they show up and they're like, oh, we're sorry, son, we're sorry, they should never have done that to you, this is awful, we're going to get rid of Joe, you can come home, this is your home now too, son. And it's this thing where he's treated like a hero because the Chancellor shows up and like helps continue feed them, and I love the smug way Alex chews his food, because it's like a steak. And
yeah, well, right before this too, we get the scene with the psychologist who comes in basically lets us know that he's been cured. But he's like, do you know anything about dreams? She said, are you having dreams? I just keep having this reoccurring one where my brains open up and people are like picking at it or something. So clearly, like, they've been messing around with his brain when he was in a coma or asleep or something.
Yeah, that's the implication. But his parents come out, but the Chancellor comes in, and the Chancellor like takes over for the nurse because he wants to talk to him. And the Chancellor's basically there, even though he presents it as if he's still in charge the entire time, he's basically there to like almost grovel and say, like, so the press are going to use this against us, and we really need people to believe in us, so like you have to be kind of on our side. And they can't treat him like a hero, because once he does agree to it, and there's a great moment where every time he gives him a bit of steak in his mouth with the fork, he sort of actually right, but there's one point where he basically, the Chancellor makes the point that he's at, and Alex just sort of lies there with his mouth open waiting for the next bite, and it's basically, this is Alex like making it clear that he's got the power here, he's in control now. And he's like, oh yes, good boy, yes.
He's basically like, we screwed up, we had the best intentions, we wanted to heal you, we wanted to make you better, but we screwed up, and there's a lot of people who have political interests who can use your story against us, but we're your friends, so we're going to give you a job, make sure you're well protected, and you'll never have to worry about anything again.
And they bring in speakers, and the press come in and start taking photos of him. He's treated like a superhero. He's treated like he's now... And it's so funny because basically what this is that he's now going to work for the state, and the state are basically going to put him to use for the person that he is, and he's not actually gotten better. He's now just been adopted into the state that's going to use him.
There is zero reformation that has happened. Like, because we get the scene with the psychologist, and she's like, just, I have a cartoon of two people talking. Just tell me what they're saying. And he immediately goes back to like violence and show me your boobs kind of dialogue. Yeah.
So he sits there and he's soaking this in, and they're going to use him. Basically, instead of punishing him, it's like, no, we can use your skills because your skills are useful. You just have to channel it through like what we want you to do. So there's obviously the hypocrisy, the idea that everyone's just as bad as him. And the final part of the movie is him saying, he's having this like dream sequence where he's with like a naked woman, they're kind of in a field, and there's like surrounded by like rows of people, and it's in slow motion, and he says
it's like a period piece too, like everyone's dressed up in Victorian era and they're like applauding him.
Yeah, it's this idea that now he'll be applauded for what he does rather than be treated like a criminal. And he basically says he's like cured at the end. He implies it, and it cuts to the credits.
He's cured because he's back to who he was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's back to being who he's supposed to be. And this is why I was saying earlier that I'm glad the final chapter that was added on wasn't included, because the final chapter in the new chapter in the book is that he finds the third Druid, because obviously we sees two of them are the cops, right? And there's a third one that we don't see again from earlier on in the movie. And the new chapter of the book, he finds him and he's settled down with a wife and he's going to have a kid. And it's basically a chapter that hints that maybe Alex can like now start to grow up and be normal. And I'm like, I feel like that deflates the point of the movie. But so I'm glad it's not there. I'm glad that this ends in this really sort of kind of cynical like way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's more fitting with the movie, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's a satire. Obviously it's showing like all these ideas of like free will, all these ideas of like even no matter how bad he is, we're not going to accomplish anything just by making him conditioned not to do something. That's not the way forward here.
Yeah, and the ending kind of reminds me of like people who have been wronged by big companies, like pharmaceutical companies, who aren't aware or are aware and didn't really give out the right information about side effects, or people who have been significantly damaged or have suffered losses because of it, and like just we'll just give you money for the rest of your life and now everything's fixed, right? Like we're friends. You won't say anything bad about us. Like it sort of reminds me of that, just the morality being paid off in a way, or by bureaucratic means. Just I don't know. It's a satire, but I think it's pretty layered.
Oh, sure. There's anything about being a satire that feels unlayered, I guess. Like
no. I think there's a ton going on in this movie. It's so smart and so funny, and just a gorgeous movie to look at. And I think the lead performance by Malcolm McDowell is, I think, maybe the best stuff we've watched so far on the show. He's so perfect for it. He's so like punk rock, but I don't know, like he's the epitome of a bad person, but he's just so engaging. It's like, I don't know.
Hey, I always
it's
say
like what
this.
You imagine maybe the devil would be if he were like real.
I always say, your main characters in a story of any kind, right? They can be one of two things that will make it work. They can be likable, or they can be interesting, or of course they can be both, but they don't need to be both. They just need to be one or the other. One of those will do. So you don't have to be likable. It can just be interesting, and he's captivating to watch, in all the awful ways that he is. So like the movie works very well. It's obviously uncomfortable in places when it gets a little bit dark early on. Most of the really rough stuff though is in the first like 20 minutes. It's the first 20-30 minutes that have all of the kind of the extreme stuff that is tougher to watch. But it's talking about social class systems. It's talking about how the government, or just society in general, kind of like makes people and uses them, and just the wider idea that okay, in this movie there's literally conditioning that happens, but it's a satire, right? So it's turned up to 11. So I think maybe what it's more exploring is the idea that society itself in the real world, if that's what it's talking about, is kind of conditioned all of us to a point to be a certain thing, or at least wants this to be a certain thing, or act a certain way, or whatever. And it's not necessarily saying that we want a world without rules, that there shouldn't be rules, that there shouldn't be guidelines to follow, but it's poking at the question of like, when is it too much? When is it too, totalitarian? So
when is it, and plus when does it take away our choice?
Yes.
If you have laws for good behavior, are you really a good person? Just because or are you just abiding by the laws? If you make everything a rule, then like I'm not. I'm just always on high alert that I'm going to be breaking a rule now, instead of just doing what I would have done, which was just try to do the right thing. I don't know. It's
a fine line. There has to be a balance, because some stuff has to be a rule because people are shitheads and don't follow them.
Sure.
Unless there's rules. Unless there's a locked-in rule, they just won't do it because people are stubborn. Chancers is the word I'd use. Like, someone will always push the limits until it's like enforced. So I can definitely see both sides of that coin. But that's the thing. I think the point of the movie ultimately is to sort of pose these questions and start asking about them. I think, yes, we do need rules. We do need some sort of structure. We do need these things in place. But we also need people to have the choice of actually being good. And I think in the real world, it's just a case-by-case thing. Some people, yes, maybe only not do bad things because there's a punishment side of like doing them. But
yes, I would never murder somebody.
Yeah, because
I value life.
But to be optimistic, though, I actually think the vast majority of people who don't break the laws and don't break the rules, the serious ones at least, I don't think they only just don't do it because of the punishments. I find it hard to believe that if murder was suddenly not a law, it was just a recommendation. I find that the majority of people would still follow it. Like, they wouldn't want to do it. There's some shitheads that would say, oh, well, now it's open season, baby. But for the most part,
I don't think we would turn into The Purge. I think it would be... Yeah. I think, like, I wouldn't take a life because I value human life and I value my own life. And I wouldn't... That sounds awful. Like, I wouldn't be able to live with that if I took someone else's life. But, if... But and maybe there's some comfort in knowing that there are people out there who won't kill me because there's a law against it. But I think the majority of people are just good people and don't want to do that also for the same reason. But go ahead. I had a point, but I forgot what it was, so. Maybe it'll come back to me.
Yeah, but I think the movie's purpose is to sort of pose these questions. And then the idea of free will, and can someone be rehabilitated? And if they can be rehabilitated, it's certainly going to be through conditioning. It's certainly going to be through forcing them.
I'm still eating blueberries.
There's going to be a new rule on this podcast about eating blueberries.
Oh, come on. Let me choose not to.
You've clearly demonstrated that you won't choose not to.
It's only because they're right in front of me. Like...
You're lucky they don't make they're not a loud thing to chew.
No, that's why I figured it was okay.
Yeah, okay. So, are you looking at your blueberries for one more? Are you picking another one? There you are. Yeah. Right after that little conversation, another one straight
Nature's
in.
candy.
All right, that has been A Clockwork Orange. It is obviously a phenomenal movie. It's very memorable. I mean, I watched this last night, and that's not a long time ago, admittedly, but there's some movies that even after one night's sleep, I will struggle to actually like summarize each of the scenes as they go. This was easy. I remembered each of the scenes in order without much effort, because each one is distinct. Each one has very distinct visuals. And
each one has a purpose.
So on a technical level, it's pretty much flawless and very unique looking. And then you have the performance, you have the themes, you have all these things going on for it. It's one of these things where, in hands of a lesser filmmaker, this could be a complete mess because they just wouldn't get. Imagine Zack Snyder trying to direct Clockwork Orange.
Oh man, there'd be way more Bible stuff.
There'd be way more Bible stuff. We'd see
more good versus evil.
Alex would be on a cross, but somehow there'd also be a jar of piss. somehow.
That slow motion kick into the water would be really epic.
But it's how unepic it is, but is in slow motion as if it's epic that makes it work. That's the beauty of it.
Plus, you have this big, bombastic, like, classical music playing behind it.
Absolutely. All right, what are you going to give Clockwork Orange out of 10?
It's hard for me to find anything about it that would make my rating go down. Anything, to be honest, and. Like, I liked the movie before we watched it, and I liked the movie after we talked about it even more. And
can I just?
Yeah,
it's
probably a masterpiece.
I want to interject here, though. You don't have to give every classic a perfect score. It's okay for you to be unable to critique it and say, okay, this is why I'm giving it a lower score. It's okay to just feel a number. Because it's just okay. It's great. It's amazing, but it's not.
I don't know if I can give a Kubrick movie not a 10. I mean, that's probably I probably can't. I really love Full Metal Jacket, but the beginning of Full Metal Jacket is like the best part.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I don't think it's a 10.
There you go.
But I think this is a 10.
I mean, Kubrick for me is mostly 9s and 10s, but this would be one that I'd put in the 9 column. I'd give this a 9 out of 10. It's wonderful.
It's really not. Yeah, there's really nothing that I can say that I don't like about this movie, and I think it's special. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 10. So screw you.
There's two. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying because I know there's other ones you're going to give a 10, and I'm just making sure there's because for me there's two Kubrick movies off the top of my head that I'd give a 10 to, and then pretty much everything else I've seen from is like a 9 or a 9.5 because the dude was insane. Like he made like just masterpiece after masterpiece. It was ridiculous, but yeah, he's one of those great directors to, you know, like most modern directors can only dream of being on the level that he was on.
There are plenty of classic movies that I would not give a 10 to, just for the record.
Okay.
But I do think this is a masterpiece, and I think it holds up pretty well.
Well, we'll see.
With the exception of like the future technology that did not so much.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I kind of said that at the start, but it wasn't really a critique against the movie so much. It was just a kind of like, hey, look at this kind of old school and goofy looking now.
They just missed it. Yeah.
But I mean, again, I wouldn't hold the movie responsible for that. I mean, it made a future that it could envision at the time. But yeah, so, you know, it's a gorgeous film. But if I'm comparing it to 2001, which is the other sci-fi movie, which is obviously going to be episode 100 in 2 years' time, or in 1 year's time, so look forward to that. But like, I feel like 2001 is like a transcendent movie where I'm like in awe like the entire time. And this movie, it obviously has so many themes and ideas, and it's exploring. It's got something to say about the human condition and about society. But 2001 feels like I'm like seeing a higher power at work. Like it's like I'm having like
looking into the eye of God.
Yes. So Clockwork Orange for me is a 9, but do not take that as a low score by any means. Like, I don't rate that many things 9s and 10s. Like, I want them to mean something when I do. I'm not handing them out.
I thought about that too. Like, even when I went into this, I'm like, this is probably a 9.5. But I only like it more after we talked about it, so I had to bump it.
Okay, I accept it.
Yeah,
I accept it. So I want opinions in the comments. Should we ban blueberries from the podcast?
There's no way people could hear me eating blueberries.
Oh dear. Anyway, so there you go. That has been A Clockwork Orange, and this has been the kickoff to our 70s sci-fi month, and there'll be 2 episodes per week. The bonus episode on Patreon when it goes up will also be a 70s movie, and it does star one David Carradine, so look forward to that. It's not the only Carradine movie you're getting this month either. One of the ones we've pre-recorded is also David Carradine, so we got some Carradine coming up the wazoo, as it were. No.
Oh boy.
a lot of stuff. Look, there's a lot of talk about David Carradine's sexual preferences in those reviews, don't worry. So a lot of stuff coming, a lot of weird movies coming, some more known ones. I can tell you that the next one that's coming, because I'm pretty sure I know what the next one is, is definitely a weird one. Because the next one that you're getting is a little movie, which is, I mean, it's debatable how sci-fi it is, but it's definitely sci-fi. There's definitely aliens involved, but it's called God Told Me To, and you're not prepared for that bad boy. That was actually the one that started us recording, because Tara said, "Oh, I watched this movie called God Told Me To," and I'm like, "I love that movie. We need to talk about God Told Me To." And then that was the start of it.
It was bizarre.
So, yeah, there we go. So look forward to all the 70s movies coming throughout the month. It's been a pleasure. You can also check out earlier this week the top 10 movies of 2019 went up, and Tara was on that with me and also Connor and Matt. And the four of us will give our top 10s for 2019, so check out that if you haven't as well. If you're looking for the audio version, that'll be in the 121 in Flux audio feed, or it's on the YouTube channel, of course. But so check out Patreon, as we said earlier, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV if you want to support us. Like, subscribe, rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars and a review. It helps more people find us that way, so you can do all that stuff. Tara, would you like to recommend any other content that we do?
Well, we just recorded the top 10 movies of 2019, and it was my first time recording with Matt, and he was pretty fun. So I think maybe check out Comics from the Multiverse, because see what that guy's like. I hear it's a good show. I don't listen to it.
I don't know if he did that intentionally, but that was really funny. He said that was the first time I recorded with Matt, and he seems pretty cool. And I'm like, it was also the first time you recorded with Connor, and you just notably didn't talk about him, which I think is really funny. So
Connor's on so many things. Matt's only on one show, I think, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Does the odd
and
movie.
like all the bonus wrestling stuff that shows up on the Patreon feed.
That sounds like someone who's annoyed at all the notifications. Like, oh, it's just the wrestling talk. You know, it's just,
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I only care if it's me.
I know.
What did I say?
So thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you have fun with 70 Sci-Fi month, and because it's kind of a 5-week month, like, you know, like obviously the first and last ones aren't full weeks, but they're big enough that it's basically 10 episodes over 5 weeks. So enjoy the rest of the month. We will see you obviously for the next episode soon, and as far as our recording goes, there's still a couple, even though we've pre-recorded a lot, the next ones we're recording are a couple of the episodes you're getting in the second half of the month. So it's not like you're not, it's not like we've recorded all the month's episodes already. Like, there's still some that we're recording later, but yes, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching sci-fi movies, guys. And computer, that's salsa.
I'm not prepared.